Have you ever imagined dying thinking you were saved, only to discover you weren't? What if there's a silent sin that's unknowingly sending millions of Christians to hell? In today's account, Kimberly Watkins reveals what Jesus showed her after 7 minutes of death, an urgent warning for the entire church. Like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below which city you're watching from. My name is Kimberly Watkins. I'm 38 years old. I'm from Texas. And until the day I died for 7 minutes, I thought I was safe. More than safe. Untouchable worship leader, pastor's wife, marriage counselor, gospel singer. My life was a traveling ministry. But all of this, it was worthless when my heart stopped that night. Because Jesus showed me something they never taught me in church. A sin that I carried deep in my soul and that, if I had died for good, would have dragged me straight to hell. Yes, hell. And you know the most terrifying thing? This sin was not adultery. It was not idolatry. It was not witchcraft. It was something far more subtle and infinitely more deadly. It all started on an ordinary evening. I had just returned from worship rehearsal at church. I prepared dinner, put my kids to bed, and went to take a shower. As the hot water ran, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if something had burst inside. I fell to my knees, completely out of breath. The last thing I saw was the fogged glass of the shower turning red with the blood that had come out of my mouth. My husband found me minutes later and called an ambulance. The doctors said I had a ruptured coronary artery. My heart stopped for 7 minutes. But in that time, my soul was somewhere else. A place where everything I thought I knew about God was destroyed in seconds. When I closed my eyes for the last time in that bathtub, I thought I'd wake up in the hospital, but that's not what happened. What came next was silence, a living silence, which seemed to weigh down on me like tons of sand. There was no sound, there was no light, but two felt everything. It was like being suspended between time and eternity. I didn't know if this was heaven or the beginning of hell. It was then that heard my name, Kimberly, but it wasn't a gentle call. It was like thunder piercing my soul. The sound carried weight, glory, absolute truth. Just hearing it made my spiritual legs give way. I fell to my knees even without a physical body, because the authority in Jesus' voice was irresistible. He appeared before me, and the first thing I thought was, this is not the Jesus in the church paintings. He was fire and purity. He was burning light. His eyes, oh, his eyes. They didn't look at my face. They looked through me. There was nowhere to hide. You called me Lord every day, he said. But he kept hatred in his heart as if it were a right. And in that moment, I saw my life like a movie. I saw every time I led worship with tears in my eyes, but carrying poison inside. I saw the times I posted verses on social media while talking badly about Sister Carla behind her back. I saw it when I hugged my mother-in-law on Sunday and cursed her name in my heart on Monday. But what came next was their shock. Jesus extended his hand, and a multitude appeared before me. Millions, people singing hymns, pastors preaching, missionaries traveling the world, women organizing prayer events, young people on spiritual retreats. Everyone looked saved, all with the gestures of Christians, all falling straight into eternal oblivion. I shouted, "Lord, but they are your children." And Jesus answered me with a voice so sharp that it made the room itself tremble. They never forgave. The scene before me was impossible to forget. Christians, millions of them, were falling one by one into endless darkness. And the most desperate thing was that they didn't seem to know what was going on. They were praising, preaching, praying, smiling, and yet fell, not because of adultery, not because of heresies, not because they reject the faith. They fell for something invisible to human eyes, but visible to the eyes of the eternal judge. Unforgiveness. The lack of forgiveness. And then Jesus showed me what was behind the masks. The intercession leader who never forgave her abusive ex-husband. The famous evangelist who hated his brother over an inheritance. The pastor's wife who smiled from the pulpit but carried a grudge against the woman who destroyed her marriage 15 years ago. They thought they were saved, but they were spiritually dead. They honor me with their lips, Jesus said, but their hearts are filled with judgment, pride, and bitterness. At that moment, I felt like something was burning inside me. It wasn't fear of hell, it was shame, because I understood. I was also among them. I saw my own face in that crowd, singing, ministering, teaching, but with Sister Carla's hatred, who had publicly humiliated me years ago, with contempt for Pastor James, who cut me from ministry without explanation, with a silent venom against my own blood sister, who stole our family's company. And then Jesus looked at me, not with anger, not with condemnation, but with infinite sadness. Do you think you can receive my grace and deny grace to others? You want mercy, but you refuse to give mercy. The pain of those words was greater than any hell I could imagine. It was as if my very heart were being exposed to the universe. I tried to justify myself, to talk about the pain, the betrayals, the abuse. But Jesus said something that destroyed me inside. You didn't want justice. You wanted revenge disguised as holiness. It was at that moment that I realized, hell is full of bitter Christians who have never allowed themselves to forgive. Jesus' presence was like a holy storm. It was impossible to run away, impossible to lie, impossible to negotiate. He didn't need to raise his voice. His every word echoed directly into the essence of my soul, revealing things that I didn't even know were still there. You preached about my love, but your heart was a prison. I cried. I begged. I tried to explain. But Lord, I tried to forgive. I prayed for them. I didn't wish them harm. He interrupted me firmly. You prayed words, but your soul desired revenge. You said, I'm at peace, but you held grudges every night. Forgiveness is not a feeling. It is a spiritual decision to let go of what hurt you, even when the wound still bleeds. At that time, he showed me a truth that destroyed me inside, and that I never heard in any sermon. My daughter, forgiveness is not a suggestion. It is a condition for salvation. If you do not forgive, you will not be forgiven. It is written, and it is not a metaphor. It is eternal justice. The passage shone before me like fire. But if you do not forgive others their sins, neither will your Father forgive your sins. Matthew 6:15. I trembled. My feet seemed to float in the void. My mind screamed for mercy. Jesus then showed me scenes from the past. Me speaking at the altar about unconditional love, while secretly avoiding my sister at every family gathering. I cried in church services, but silently celebrated when I learned that the sister who betrayed me had lost her job. Me singing, I give you everything, while hiding hate, as if it were a trophy of pain. And then Jesus looked at me with a question that cut to my soul. If I had judged you like you judged others, where would you be now? Silence. I broke down. There was no defense, no excuse, no theology to protect me, only the raw and eternal truth. I had lived like a Christian, but loved like a Pharisee. And in that moment, Jesus showed me something even more devastating. I thought I had seen it all, but what Jesus showed me next was something no soul is prepared to see. He reached out and opened his hand before me, a spiritual book, which seemed to be made of living light. I knew immediately. It was the book of life. I saw names on it, many names, but I also saw something that chilled me to the core, names being erased. A bright glow surrounded each name, until suddenly the glow faded and the name vanished like smoke in the wind. And I knew, without anyone explaining it to me, these were the ones who lived as if they were saved, but died full of hatred, resentment, and lack of forgiveness. They were on the church membership lists, in the pulpits, at Christian conferences, in the praise groups, but they were no longer in the book of life. They did everything in my name, Jesus said, but they refused to look like me. And then he spoke the most important phrase, terrifying, that I have heard in my spiritual existence. Hell is not full of atheists. It is full of unforgiving believers. I felt my soul shatter. I thought about all the years I spent judging the world, pointing out the sin out there, while my heart was a grave of unresolved hurts. I remembered when my best friend cheated on me, and I smiled, said it's okay, but inside I wished her life would fall apart. I remembered when that pastor humiliated me in public, and I said I had let it go, but secretly I prayed that God would knock him off the altar. And then Jesus showed me how these wounds turned into invisible chains in my soul. Every resentment, every unresolved offense, every forgotten hurt, they were all still alive, and they were killing me spiritually. The forgiveness you refuse to give, he said, becomes the very forgiveness you refuse to receive. At that moment, I realized I wasn't a victim. I was a jailer, and the prison I had built for others was the same one that separated me from heaven. Jesus led me along a narrow path, like a bridge over the abyss. To my left, heaven, a glory so intense that my spirit yearned for it like a shipwrecked man thirsting for water. To my right, hell, not fire, not flames, but absolute emptiness, an eternal absence of God. And I saw thousands of Christians falling every minute. They screamed, they cried, they said, "Lord, Lord," but it was too late. They had sung, "Your grace is sufficient for me," but denied that same grace to those who hurt them. A man passed me. I recognized him. He was a famous television pastor. He preached about miracles and had thousands of followers, but his eyes were empty of love. Jesus showed me. He died without forgiving the father who abandoned him in childhood. A woman fell soon after. She was a missionary. She evangelized tribes, opened schools, and cared for orphans, but she harbored hatred for the sister who betrayed her inheritance. "They did amazing things in my name," Jesus said, "but they never gave their hearts completely. Hell isn't just for murderers and witches," he continued. "It is also for those who refuse to forgive, even though they know how much they have been forgiven." I felt a chill that wasn't physical. It was spiritual. The feeling that millions are trusting in an incomplete salvation, a salvation of appearance, of religion, of good works, but without transformation of the heart. And then, he pointed at me. "Kimberly, if your life had ended in that bathtub, you would now be with them." My spirit sank into despair. I wanted to scream, run, erase everything I'd done wrong. But there was no more time. There was no more after, only the truth. And that's when I understood. It's not the big sins that keep us from heaven. It's the little poisons we refuse to let go of. Family grievances, old grudges, injustices that we cultivate as trophies, wounds we use as excuses for hate. And Jesus said, "Heaven is a place of clean hearts, and cleanliness begins with forgiveness." I was there, facing eternity, crushed by the weight of my own bitterness. And it was then that Jesus, with a firm but merciful voice, asked me, "Do you want to go back?" At that moment, my soul groaned, "Yes, Lord, but I don't want to go back to the same old way." He drew near. The glory around him increased so much that it felt like my spirit would dissolve. And then, with a simple gesture, he touched the center of my being, not with a finger, but with the truth itself. In that touch, I saw all the moments where I could have chosen to forgive but didn't. I saw my friend, Regina, begging me for forgiveness for a betrayal, and I was smiling on the outside, but keeping the contempt inside. I saw my father-in-law humiliating me in front of the family, and I said I had forgiven him, but secretly wished he would get sick. I saw my sister asking me for a chance, and I was using God as an excuse to keep my distance. And then Jesus said to me, "You weren't fighting for justice. You were feeding your pride, and pride is the father of all bitterness." I started crying like I had never cried before, not physical tears, but tears of the soul. It was as if everything I had built spiritually was crumbling in seconds. But Lord, I don't know how to forgive. Some wounds are too deep, and that's when Jesus said one of the most important phrases of my entire existence. "You forgive the same way you were forgiven, by grace. You don't feel first. You decide, you release, and then I heal." He then showed me images that seemed absurd. A father hugging the man who killed his son. A wife caring for her husband's lover in the hospital. A pastor financially helping the family of the man who spread lies and destroyed his reputation. They did not do it by human strength, Jesus explained. They let me love through them. At that moment, I understood forgiveness is not natural, it is supernatural. It's a miracle that begins when you choose to let go, even when everything inside you wants to hold on. And then Jesus said to me, "You will return, and you will warn my people, because many are going straight to perdition, thinking they are going to heaven, and all because of a sin they don't even consider a sin, lack of forgiveness." Jesus' presence began to fade, but his voice remained firm in my spirit, as if it were being engraved deep within my soul. "You need to tell them," he repeated. "Tell my church that many are losing eternity because of dirty hearts that refuse to cleanse." And then he gave me a vision. I saw one spiritual clock. The hands moved quickly, each second faster than the last. With each passing hour, thousands of Christians were being condemned eternally, not because they reject the faith, but for living an incomplete faith, a faith that sings, but does not heal, who preaches, but does not forgive, who fasts, but does not let go of the offense. I saw entire churches with vibrant ministries, but with members wallowing in old hurts, resentments masked as opinion, and grudges baptized as discernment. Jesus told me something that shook me. They think that time will heal what only forgiveness can heal, but time only hides. Forgiveness sets you free. He showed me crowds holding invisible chains. Some held pictures of people who had betrayed them. Others held divorce papers, wills, hurtful messages, painful memories. Everyone said, "I have already forgiven," but the chains were still there. Why it's not enough to say it. You have to let it go. You have to wish well. You have to let it go. Tell them, Jesus said, that hell is full of good Christians who died with their souls at war. Tell me I don't care how many verses they know, how many times they serve, how many souls they have evangelized. If they don't love, are not mine. The sign of my people is not zeal, it is forgiveness. The sign of my people is not the gift, it is love. And then, Jesus showed me a spiritual mirror. In it, I saw my face, and behind it, all the people I said I had forgiven, but their faces were stained with marks that only I saw. These marks were my judgment, my bitterness, my hidden criticism, and Jesus asked me, "Do you want me to see you like this too?" I collapsed. "No. Lord, I want to be clean." "Then cleanse the others," he said. "Whoever does not wash the feet of his brothers has no part with me." At that moment, I felt myself being pulled back, a flash, a sensation of impact, my spirit returning with violence. And before everything went dark, Jesus said for the last time, "Tell them, this sin is unforgivable, because forgiveness is the very bridge that leads to heaven." When I opened my eyes, I was in the hospital bed. Monitors were beeping, nurses were rushing around, my husband was crying. But none of this felt as real to me as the eternity from which I had just returned. 7 minutes in cardiac arrest, 7 minutes in the court of heaven, and it took just 7 minutes to understand that I almost lost everything. People asked me, "Kimberly, have you seen heaven? Have you seen angels?" And I replied with tears in my eyes, "I saw the gate of heaven, and the abyss right beside it, and I was heading straight there even with the Bible in my hand." For days, I couldn't speak, not because my throat hurt, but because my spirit was broken. Everything in me had been turned inside out. The Spirit of God began to show me names, faces, buried sorrows. Memories that I thought I had overcome came back to the surface. But this time, not to accuse me, to be cured. I wrote letters. I made phone calls. I apologized to people I hadn't seen in years. Not to sound noble, but because my salvation was at stake. I forgave the woman who ruined my reputation. I forgave the man who publicly mocked my faith. I forgave my sister, who I hadn't spoken to in almost a decade because of a family misunderstanding. And each forgiveness was a chain that was broken. Forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about your eternity. Forgiving isn't about validating what someone did to you. It's about stopping it from continuing to destroy you from within. And the most surprising thing, my body was recovering faster than the doctors expected, but the real miracle was in my spirit. For the first time in years, I felt lightness. Not the lightness of religion, but the lightness of grace, the lightness of a clean heart. I began sharing my experience with some brothers in Christ. Many wept. Others were outraged. God cannot send a Christian to hell just because he has not forgiven. This is heresy, this is legalism. But I replied calmly, it's not that God commands you. It's that you disconnect yourself from him when you choose hate. You cannot receive forgiveness with hands that still hold a grudge. Jesus showed me, there is no room in heaven for those who carry garbage in their soul. It's been months since the night I died and was miraculously brought back. But the scars of that experience will never leave me. I wake up every day with one question burning in my heart. Who haven't I completely forgiven yet? Not out of fear, but because I've been on the other side. I saw the price of holding a grudge. I have seen what happens to sincere believers who they die without letting go of their grief. They don't go to hell because God stopped loving them. They go because carried in their hearts the sin that separated them from his presence. And no, I'm not talking about scandalous sins. I'm talking about the subtle, silent sin, the one that disguises itself as reason, self-righteousness, and unresolved trauma, the lack of forgiveness. Jesus showed me that hell is populated by wounded Christians, people who, they loved the Bible but hated their father. They led ministries, but they never let go of their spouse's betrayal. They preached about love, but they never forgave the rejection of years ago. You cannot be my disciple and an enemy of forgiveness at the same time, Jesus told me, and I understood. Being a Christian is not about going up to the altar, raising your hands, or singing beautifully. It is love when it hurts. It is release when the soul cries out for revenge. It is free the other, even when he never apologized. Today, every time I look at someone who has hurt me, I say a prayer. Jesus, help me to love as you have loved me. Help me to forgive with the same scandal of grace you used with me. And if you're listening to me now, if you're a Christian, if you think you're safe because you go to church, because you know the word, and stop. Look at your heart. Make no mistake. This sin is unforgivable because it prevents God's forgiveness from entering. You can lose everything by refusing to forgive. And if you think you can't, ask for help. That's what I did. And the grace of Jesus found me on the edge of the abyss. Forgive while there is still time. Let go while there is still breath. Love while there is still a beat in your heart. Because in the end, it's not about what they did to you. It's about what you will do with it. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, comment, share your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.